Video 2 is just going to be about how to write an APA-style report of regression results. When we're writing an APA-style report of regression results, we're going to start off the same way we started off all of our APA-style reports, describing the research question and the participants and methods involved in the research. So for this example is a little bit different because it doesn't have participants per se. It just has Dan, who has recorded herself for 100 days. So the participants and methods write-up that you're going to do for the assignment is going to look quite different than what we do from this example. Just make note of that. This is a little bit of a different example just because of the nature of the data. But so for this, I would say a researcher / new parent named Dan, which is really Danielle, was interested in whether the amount of sleep she got predicted how grumpy she felt the next day. That's the research question. Does the amount of sleep predict amount of grumpiness? For 100 days, she recorded how long she slept in hours and how grumpy she felt the next day on a scale from 0 to 100, where higher scores indicates more grumpiness. The next thing you do is report the mean and standard deviation of all variables. So this is this part. And remember, you're trying to interpret the mean and standard deviation, or trying to at least interpret the mean in terms of like a meaningful metric, right? So you wouldn't just say the mean of sleep was 6.97. It's much better communication-wise to express it in terms of something like, on average, Dan slept 6.97 hours, and then report the standard deviation in brackets. And then average grumpiness on the 0 to 100 scale was 63.7, right? Again, it's just better communication to lay it out for your audience like that than to say average grumpiness was 63.7. Okay? Just give them some context with the mean. Now we say a regression was conducted, and here you want to specify what variable X was, the predictor, and then what the criterion or variable Y was. So here's what this looks like here. A regression was conducted with how long Dan slept as the predictor and Dan grumpiness as the criterion. The very first thing that you do when interpreting the numbers, the regression result, is cite and then interpret the R-squared value. We do it like this. So recall that R-squared, remember R-squared is right here. 81.6% of the variability in how grumpy Dan is can be explained by how much sleep Dan gets. Okay. And then you put in brackets, i.e. R-squared equals 0.816. And then after that, you simply report the slope, the standardized slope, and the p-value, right? Then the next thing you do is to interpret the slope. And in this, you want to, again, make it as understandable as possible, put it in as much lay language as possible. So I tried to do this here by writing it like this. So for every additional hour of sleep Dan gets, Dan's grumpiness is predicted to decrease by 8.94 points on the 0 to 100 grumpiness scale. And then make some kind of concluding statement about how good the model is. So something like, it seems therefore that how much sleep Dan got is a very good predictor of how grumpy she feels the next day, right? And that's just kind of like a conclusion that you can make based on the size of the R-squared. If your R-squared is really high, then you have a good model. And so that's usually the criteria that we use to make a concluding statement like that. If your R-squared was really low, you might say that it wasn't such a great model, or that, that predictor wasn't such a great predictor. And that is that.